Good morning, everyone. So there lies a big opportunity for NexGen energy, especially given the growing critical need for uranium against a backdrop of a widening supply-demand gap. Now, before we begin, please note that I will be using forward-looking information and making forward-looking statements throughout this presentation. So, as we've all observed, the support for nuclear, particularly over 2023, has been dramatic. There continues to be positive, unrelenting news flow in favour of this energy source as more governments and industries consider nuclear the solution to the climate crisis and the energy crisis. Geopolitical situations worldwide have also accelerated the path for governments to include nuclear or feature nuclear as a prominent part of its energy diversification and energy security strategy. So demand for nuclear and subsequently uranium is very robust worldwide, but the supply situation grows increasingly precarious. Now, where does NexGen Energy fit into all this? We are a Canadian uranium exploration and development company. We're triple listed on the TSX, the NYSE and the ASX, and our flagship asset is the Arrow deposit at our Rook I project. Now, Arrow has been described as a geological phenomenon, and it has been recognised as the world's largest, lowest cost, high-grade uranium deposit under development. Now, the project is located in one of the best sovereign locations for developing a uranium mine, the premier mining-friendly jurisdiction of Saskatchewan, Canada. NexGen has a significant land package spanning 190,000 hectares in the southwest Athabasca Basin, which is an area known to be super rich in uranium. Now, the project is in the final stages of the federal approval process, and once in production, we're going to be able to produce up to 30 million pounds of uranium, with our mill permitted for 24 years. Now, 30 million pounds annually is up to over 50% of global Western supply and up to 25% of total global uranium supply. Now, to put that into perspective for you, Saudi Arabia, they're responsible for producing 8 to 10% of global oil supply. They're very influential in that market. So when Arrow comes online, we'll be very disruptive and influential in the space. It is a massive project that will help fulfill some of today's supply gap, but it's not going to be enough. So I know a few people have touched on this over this conference, but I think it's important to stress the gravity of the situation. So demand for uranium is expected to increase 127% by 2030 and 200% by 2040. This is a massive increase that the industry cannot meet in time. And you know, it's a situation that the industry has never seen before, with the current state of mine supply having never been more fragile. Many multiples of Rook I's annual production will be required to meet this forecasted supply gap, and that's why projects like Rook I and others must be brought online and into production. And what's driving demand? In December last year, a pretty remarkable thing happened at the COP28 event, where we saw 22 countries sign a declaration to triple nuclear capacity by 2050. That number has now grown to 28, and it was the biggest endorsement yet of the role that nuclear energy will play in the energy transition away from fossil fuels. So you'll continue to see many more supportive policies come out of the EU, the US, the UK, and Japan. Countries will continue to apply to extend the lifetime on existing reactors, embark upon refurbishments, capacity increases, and then there's demand from the advent of small modular reactors. Worldwide, there's currently 60 reactors being built in over 17 countries. A further 110 are planned. That number also doesn't include India's latest news, where they've said they're going to add a further 18 nuclear builds to their nuclear build-out program. So the demand from these emerging economies alone is enough to keep this market really tight till the end of the decade. We are in a period of significant nuclear investment with no signs of slowing down. On the supply side, supply is entering a challenging period for the foreseeable future. Post-Fukushima, there has been massive underinvestment in exploration and mine development all the way up until 2020, which really wasn't that long ago. Restarting idle mines are proving challenging because the cost to produce a pound has increased, Major producers are supply constrained. There's scarcity of new mine supply, long lead times on greenfield projects due to the complexity of permitting a uranium mine. And then you've also got geopolitical issues, the Russian uranium import ban that's looming in the background, the bifurcation of markets as more people seek for diversified Western supply. Now, NexGen, because of our technical setting, we have extremely low costs. And as a result of our technical setting, we're able to flex production up and down in line with market conditions. This means that we are able to and will use volume-based contracting referencing spot prices at the time of delivery. This approach will maximise the dollar received on every pound produced. And this approach will be new to the industry and will provide transparency and promote resiliency of the uranium supply chain. So I mentioned our low costs before. We have a low all-in sustaining cost of US sub $11. Now, based on the 2021 feasibility study, at a spot price of US $100 a pound, we'll generate some pretty compelling economics. We will generate $8 billion NPV Canadian, over $2 billion in free cash flow, a sub 82% IRR, and a very quick payback period of less than a year. So some really incredible numbers here. Now, because of our low costs, we go into production under any pricing cycle, and we're highly cash generative in all pricing environments. Even if you do not agree with the spot price trajectory, we will still be making billion-dollar NPVs and billion-dollar EBITDAs, as we've got great downside protection from our low-cost profile. So, as for our expansion potential, note that the darker green bars here cover our measured and indicated, that's in our feasibility study, of 260 million pounds at 3.1% grades. Over 60% of our measured and indicated is at 17% grades, which is 170 times the global average. The lighter green area on this graph represent our 81 million in inferred resources, which are around 1% grades, and adding value through our drill bit. So earlier this year, we announced our 2024 exploration program, where we said we'd drill 30,000 metres with the objective of finding new arrow-like discoveries. And a couple of weeks ago, we released a pretty exciting news release where we hit intense new uranium mineralisation 3.5 kilometres away from Arrow. And while it's still early days, it's looking like the results of that extremely promising with double-digit grades. So 30 million pounds of uranium a year. What does that mean from an environmental ESG perspective? That's enough to power 46 million homes. That's a third of the homes in the US. So that's all the homes in Florida, Texas, Pennsylvania, New York, and yeah, I think that's it. And we'll do that by also removing 70 million car equivalents of CO2 a year. So that's over 300 million tonnes of CO2 avoided annually. It is an amazing project, and to the best of my knowledge, no other resource project will be as impactful as Rook 1. So where are we at with our approval process? Well, last year in November, NexGen received their provincial environmental assessment approval. This is huge because we're the first greenfield uranium project to have reached this major regulatory milestone decision in Saskatchewan since the 1990s. We're the first greenfield project to have been approved that is 100% independently owned, non-government owned, and it's also one of the most efficient approvals with respect to cost and time. Now that we have our provincial environmental assessment approval, we are laser focused on acquiring the federal approvals required for the project, and we will have an update on that this year. Now, our project also has industry-leading impact benefit agreements signed with all of the Indigenous communities local to the project site. This is unheard of in mining, and it's something that the team is so incredibly proud of having built. And as a further testament to the trust and collaboration built by the team, Indigenous leaders from these groups have also been proactively advocating for our project in the federal government of Canada and the Saskatchewan Parliament. That is also unheard of in mining. So, at a $100 spot price, based on free cash flow, we will generate $1.6 billion US. That will place us in the top 10 mining companies of the world. Now, we think that the spot price will move beyond $150 a pound. And if we look at the last spot price run in the 2000s, it hit a high of $135, $140 a pound, which in today's dollars equates to about $200 a pound. Now, the difference between back then and now is that a lot of the major producers back then are either no longer in existence or they're already supply constrained. And so beyond $150 spot price, we'll be in the top 5 mining companies of the world. As for our capital structure, we currently have $410 million cash on hand. With the exception of some G&A items, every dollar spent going forward will be on project capex and working capital. Now, in terms of financing, we have several expressions of interest totaling about US $1.25 billion from traditional lenders, international lenders, and export credit agencies that are all very motivated to invest in an elite ESG project. As for our executive and leadership team, they're very experienced and entrepreneurial, and it's not just our leadership team that are really determined. That determination flows through the whole team, the whole company, and as a result of our collective culture, process, and execution, we have achieved one of the most efficient approvals with respect to cost and time. Again, we have a highly credible board with deep expertise through a dozen subject matters, and with their guidance, we're well placed to navigate the dynamics of the uranium market sector while safeguarding the interests of our stakeholders and shareholders alike. So I've shared a lot with all of you today. It's going to be a very busy year for NexGen for 2024 as we look to establish our federal approvals hearing date, complete our site infrastructure program, award our shaft sinking contracts, commence major construction, all while in parallel running our 2024 exploration program. I thank you so much for your interest and your time, and if you have any questions, please find me around the conference. Thank you.